Good evening and welcome to the May 25th, 2021 Planning Board meeting of the town of Danvers. As a preliminary matter, this is John Farmer, Chair of the Planning Board. With me this evening, I have Josh Morris, David Field, and Aaron Henry from the town's Planning Division. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Peg Zielinski.
Here.
As a preliminary matter, this is John Farmer, Jim Sears.
Here.
And I understand Tori Adler cannot make the meeting tonight. And I believe the two items on the agenda are going to be led by Attorney McCann. So, Attorney McCann, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Thanks. Staff, Josh, David, and Aaron, you can all hear us, correct?
Correct. It's just me and Aaron tonight, though, John. Josh is absent.
Okay. That's why I didn't see him. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks,
Sorry.
Appreciate that. This is an open meeting of the Danvers Planning Board. It's being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town's website, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comments. For this meeting, the Planning Board is convening remotely by the Teams app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything we broadcast may be captured by the recording. Supporting materials that have been provided to the members of this body will be shown during this transmission. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda, but before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of tonight's meeting and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comments, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields to the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage with each other, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, we have established an email address for public comments @danversmass.gov. This email address is shown online with the streaming of this meeting. Residents may email comments and they will be read out loud after the staff has confirmed the name and address of the questionnaire. All emails must contain the date and phrase planning board meeting in the subject line. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. So the first item on the agenda is 25 Conan Street, request for approval of a major modification to an approved site plan pursuant to Section 4 of the zoning bylaws submitted by James Gattuso for property in Resident 1 zoning district. The applicant proposes to convert the existing 3-family resident building into a 4-family resident building and associate site modification. Assessor's map 43, lot 278. And I believe Attorney McCann will lead this discussion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Nancy McCann. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, James Gattuso. Mr. Gattuso, I see, has joined the meeting as well. And this application is regarding the property located at 25 Conant Street, located in the R1 zoning district. And we are seeking a major modification of a previously approved site plan to allow the property to be converted from 3 residential units to 4 residential units. And that conversion is under section 30 of the zoning bylaw. A little bit of history with regard to this site. The existing dwelling located on the property was built in about 1890, and it has undergone a number of different uses over the years. It was originally constructed as a single-family residence. It later became medical offices, and subsequently after that, it became a mixed-use professional offices with 2 residential units in addition to the professional offices. And then back in 2006, the then owner sought and received a special permit from the Board of Appeals to convert the dwelling into 3 dwelling units at that time. That at the time, back in 2006, the zoning bylaw gave, and for conversion situations, the Board of Appeals the site plan approval process. And in fact, as part of the special permit issued back in 2006, the Board of Appeals did issue site plan approval, and the property was renovated through the conversion, and that site plan's substantially in the same condition as it is today. The applicant, Mr. Gattuso, purchased this property at a foreclosure sale. The property needs some renovation and some updating, and certainly some rehabilitation, and he is planning to undertake that. And in December of last year, 2020, Mr. Gattuso applied and received from the Board of Appeals a special permit under Section 30 to allow the conversion of this property into 4 dwelling units. And I know the board is familiar with the conversion process, but it is a process afforded buildings that were in existence under the bylaw to be converted into residential dwelling units. And that was the process that was undertaken here, provided there are no changes to the structure that would alter it from its original residential feel and look. And specifically, you can make changes to the structure to provide means of egress and access to meet code requirements. But basically, when you do a conversion under Section 30, the building is supposed to stay substantially the same as it historically has been. And that is the case here. So we received the special permit back in December to allow 4 units here. And under the bylaw now, the Board of Appeals is no longer the site plan authority for conversions. So we have applied for a major modification of the previously approved site plan in order to get site plan approval for the conversion to 4 units. There are only interior renovations to the building proposed, with the exception of removal of some of the unsightly fire escapes. That if you've looked at the property, there's some pretty substantial fire escapes that have been constructed for code compliance over the years. The internal renovations that are proposed are going to allow for appropriate code compliant access without these fire escapes. So those will be removed. But other than that, there will be no change to the building. There is no footprint increase. There is no alteration of the building itself. We are proposing on the site plan to realign the parking area, and that will require the addition of some pavement as indicated in the application. We're looking at a small increase in the pavement area to allow for the required 8 parking spaces. About 1,600 square feet of pavement will be added. We are not using, however, I will note, a previous variance that was granted that allowed parking within the front setback. The site plan that you have in front of you is compliant, meaning that the parking spaces are located behind the front setback as required. So that variance, which was granted by the Board of Appeals back in 2006, will not be necessary. So the parking is compliant. We show the required number of parking spaces. In addition, with regard to site changes, we have added some substantial landscaping to the site. We have added 21 new plantings. Specifically, we have added some arborvitae that was discussed during the Board of Appeals meeting as to whether we could add some arborvitae, and we are doing that. We are also adding a new fence along the easterly lot line and providing some overall improvements to the site. I'm trying to share my screen. If I can be allowed to do that. Can I do that, Mr. Chairman?
Yep, go right ahead.
All right, let's see if this works. Oh boy. There it is. I had some trouble with my screen sharing last night at the Board of Appeals meeting on Microsoft Teams, but hopefully this is going to work. Do you see my?
Not yet, Nancy's.
Okay, let's try it and see if that's working. I have trouble screen sharing with Microsoft Teams.
Attorney McCann, if you'd like to, I can attempt to pull it up. Up to you.
Yeah, if you want to try doing that. I don't know why I have trouble with this. For some reason on Teams.
Mr. Chair, while this is going on, I just wanted, I'm going to need to go off and then come back just because I'm having problems with my connection. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the cover sheet. The next sheet is the existing conditions site plan. And then the next sheet is the proposed. And as you can see, we've lined up the parking spaces as required to meet the setback requirements. We have added 21 plantings, including the arborvitae that you see there, 5 arborvitae. We are also proposing a fence along the easterly lot line, which actually it's a southerly lot line. If you have been out to the site, you noticed that it is in significant need of repair. And we have removed the fire escapes that are located along the back. So we do think that this is a substantial improvement over the existing conditions. The total landscaping on the site, we have impervious surface of 43.9% and landscaping on this site of 56.1% landscaping. We have certainly respected the historic integrity of the building. We're not making changes to the building other than the fire escapes. And we think that this is certainly going to be a significant improvement to the neighborhood. We did request some waivers, and those waivers relate to plan preparation and waiving some of the plan requirements for items that are not being altered. We are not altering utilities, we're not altering the building, we're not altering grading. So we have asked for some consideration on the waivers with regard to technical plan preparation. I did submit, in lieu of elevation drawings for the building, I did submit photographs of the existing building as well. We received some planning department comments, which I have worked through with Josh Morris, and we noted the fire department comment with regard to code compliance for sprinkler systems. So I think that is it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So Jim, why don't we start with you tonight?
I don't really have any questions, Sean. It looks pretty straightforward to me. Looks like a good refurbishment of an existing property, so I'm fine with it.
Okay, Peg?
Okay.
Yes, there you go.
I'm coming. Okay, yeah. I don't really have any questions either. I did see that the planning department requested more plantings in the back of the property to screen the parking lot. Is that what the arborvitaes were done in response to?
The arborvitaes were done in response to comments that we received at the Board of Appeals,
Okay.
and specifically from the board comments and audience participation asked for some arborvitaes there. I don't believe I saw comments from Planning Department requesting any additional plantings. We are proposing the 21 additional plantings.
Okay, there's a note here that says additional landscaping along Chase Street to screen buffer parking lot at rear of building. So you didn't receive that comment?
I did not receive that one.
Okay.
But I think we've done a pretty good job with landscaping.
Yeah, I think it looks good. I just I was concerned about the fire department because a lot of people don't realize about that sprinkler system over 3 units, but I'm glad to see that you've added that. The engineering division had a number of comments. Did you answer all of those? I haven't seen an email from the engineering department saying that you answered those comments.
I did not receive those comments. When perhaps Director Fields can let me know when those came in, or we can go through them now. With the last time I spoke with Josh, he had not received those comments yet, so I'm happy to go through them right now if you'd like to read them, because I didn't receive them.
Sure. This is not from. Well, I have the engineering email here. Thank you, Josh. Although you're not here, Josh, but in reading a staff summary, it said applicant shall provide storm management plan. Applicant shall show snow storage on the utility plan. That's under stormwater. Sewer, applicant shall note size and material of existing sewer lines. 2, applicant shall verify condition of sewer pipe for proposed use. Water, applicant shall note size and material of existing water lines. 2, applicant shall verify condition of water pipe for proposed use. And then roadway and other, 1, applicant shall label construction notes on the plan. 2, applicant shall provide erosion and sedimentation controls during construction, which makes sense. Application shall provide construction details for all proposed landscaping and impervious changes and erosion control.
I would say those are pretty significant requests for something where we are doing interior renovations, with the exception of the drive, the additional pavement for the driveway, again, about 1,600 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
Since I'm seeing those tonight, what I would ask, and the applicant would take as a condition, is that if the board would allow it, that we will work through the comments with the engineering department prior to issuance of the building permit. We can work through those comments. Those are all pretty technical utility type connection things.
Yes. That sounds fine to me. I guess that's it. It looks nice, Attorney McCann. Hopefully, we're encouraging more people into the downtown.
Lou, you're next.
Okay, great, thank you. And I apologize for my problems with the internet. So hopefully this will be squared away. And I don't think, hopefully no one else asked this, but just with respect to parking, and the only thing I was wondering, Attorney McCann, is just with respect to parking, it's my understanding, that it did go before the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I did take a look at the minutes from the December 14th meeting. And I'm just taking a look at it here, and it was on page 3 of the minutes. And a question by Matt Duggan, then town meeting member, he asked if the parking will be on the existing impervious area or whether they'll be expanding. And you indicated that there would be no expansion. They are using the existing 8 parking spaces. So I just wanted to understand, like, between then and now, was there what sort of prompted the expansion of the impervious area?
Well, we looked at it when the site plan was put together to make sure that the parking spaces aligned properly and that we had enough room for the parking spaces so that they could be effectively used. So it was just a part of the design, the site plan design.
Okay. And I also, in terms of, that location is relatively, it's actually relatively close to where I live. So I took a walk down there this afternoon and took a look at it. And so I did notice that there was a fair amount of pavement there already. So is any, and perhaps, I looked at the plans, is any pavement being eliminated at all and then more elsewhere, or is just more pavement in general?
My understanding, and if we look at the site plan, existing versus proposed, I believe there is just a bit of an extension of the pavement towards the back as you drive in, just a little bit more toward the back.
Okay. And you all would, you said add fencing to the area that sort of abuts, I guess it's number 3 Chase Street?
Yes.
Okay.
If you went out there as you did, you saw that the part of the fence is falling down, and there isn't fence in a lot of it when we're proposing a fence along that line. Okay.
And have there been any sort of abutter comments or concerns at all? I know, because that is right adjacent to number 3 Chase.
No, when we went to the Board of Appeals, we had a few people who were there who commented, and the comments were favorable, because it's going to beautify this site, which needs some work.
Okay.
And it will be an improvement.
And you indicated that the existing fire escapes will be removed? Yes. Okay.
Particularly the large one in the back towards the parking lot, that's very large. That won't be needed for code compliance.
Oh, you said that is not required for compliance, correct?
Right. There's going to be internal renovations so that we won't have to have those fire escapes.
Okay. Understood. I don't think I have any concerns. I think it looks like a good project. And again, the concern I would have, sort of like as Peg was saying, I would just want to make sure that you all worked out with engineering any of the comments that they had.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. So Attorney McCann, my question's more about the project. There's a lot of people watching tonight, and I'm sure the public has an interest in this project as well. Can you just describe the size of the units, the 4 units that are being built, approximately square footage, and is this being built as condominium quality?
Yes, condominium quality. And I believe the application had square footage. Let me just pull that up.
There's a 1-bedroom, 2 2-bedrooms, and 1 3-bedroom being proposed.
Right. Let me just see. I think I have my square footages here. Yes. Unit 1 is 836 square feet. Unit 2, 542 square feet. That's the 1-bedroom. Unit 3, 896 square feet. Unit 4, 891 square feet. So they're small units, but nicely sized for that area.
Okay. My other questions were answered, and I support making sure that the applicant works with the engineering department if we have a favorable recommendation. So why don't I turn it to David, to the public, to see if anyone in the public would like to comment on this application.
Sure. I don't think we received any specific asks, but if there's anyone out there, feel free to speak.
Yeah, I see Matt Duggan would like to be recognized. So, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, so I spoke with the resident or the owner of 3 Chase Street, Kevin Dewhurst. I'm not sure if he was able to join this call. I'd prefer to have him speak first if he is on the line. Okay. All right, well, I guess he wasn't able to make it, but I can share some of his comments. I don't think he attended the ZBA meeting, so for the record, Matthew Duggan, 41 Chase Street, a resident for more than 20 years on Chase Street. So this property, I don't believe it's been occupied for several years, but prior to that, when it was actually an apartment building, it was a notorious blight on the neighborhood in terms of not only visually, but the activity that took place there. There were a number of times where the police were called to quell different types of disturbances that happened there. So the people that live in close proximity to this property are very apprehensive when we see another unit being added to the three. Now they're wondering, well, maybe it's deja vu all over again. So they're very concerned about how the owner is going to maintain this property going forward. It appears to me just to be an income property with an absentee landlord. So that's my personal opinion. So at the ZBA meeting, I did mention the landscaping along the border with 3 Chase and the mention of the arborvitaes. The fences have been in disrepair for a number of years and actually have fallen down along that one lot line. So the neighbor there at number 3 is looking to have substantial improvement along that as a buffer. So when he looks out his windows, he doesn't see, a parking lot. If he could somehow visually create a buffer there, he'd be in favor of that. In terms of condo quality, I'm skeptical of that comment. The building is quite old, from the 1800s, and it does still maintain some architectural detail from past years, especially around the cornices at the roof line, where there's it looks like pretty much maintained the architectural detail. But as your eye drops down the building, you can see where the vinyl siding has just over time faded, and it just gives the building a kind of a tired look. So it's not I'm not happy to hear that the outside is not going to really be improved at all. It sounds like it's just kind of more of the same look. Now, can we go to the planning or the parking? Can Mr. Fields bring up the parking again? Because I want to kind of take a closer look at that, because 8 spots on the side there is that's a tight fit. Is Mr. Fields able to bring up that plan?
I'm here. John, would you like me to do that?
Yeah, if you can, David, please.
Yeah, just give me a moment.
So, yeah, I wanted to look at the actual layout of the parking spaces and also the snow storage, because that's a problem in Back Bay, where the plows back in and push the snow out across the roadway, which is a violation of the town bylaw. So that's, we like to see these types of developments, how the snow is going to be stored on site. So we'll focus on that, I think, when the plan comes up. Just a question to the applicant. So the unit that's only a little over 500 square feet, is that the unit that's being added in the basement? Is that the 4th unit that was allowed by the ZBA?
James is on the call. I'd have to look up the site plan, the floor plans that we submitted to the ZBA. That'll take me a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm here now if you want to give me the opportunity to speak, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Is that permissible?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, so the unit that's being added is a portion of the basement. The basement was previously finished with an illegal apartment, and this kind of, when I bought the house out of foreclosure, when Richard Maloney was present, I ripped out the whole apartment in the basement. So basically, the first floor is going to get split and have a portion of the basement as finished living space. So that's kind of where the additional unit's coming from.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you for that information. So let's look at this parking layout where we have 8 spaces in parallel. The number, especially number 8. So that, to get out of there, is that you can? I'm not sure. I can't really see the width between the fence there at the bottom and the. Is it 47? No, it's the total width. I was just wondering how cars are going to get in and out of there. And then back to the snow storage. So where is the snow going to be stored here?
I'm pulling up the plan also. We have got, there's about 6 feet of difference in the back at the end of the parking space number 8. And there will be room for storing snow there. There's also room for storing snow on the other side of number 1. And there's also some distance at the end of the parking spaces before the arborvitae, understanding that we don't store snow on the arborvitae, but there is certainly room to store snow in that location. So there are 3 different areas of available for snow storage on the site.
So whenever we see snow pushed up against fences, we know what inevitably happens with that. So at the bottom of the parcel there, where it says proposed, I think 6-foot fence. So there'll be no vegetation between the hot top and that fence. There'll just be the 6-foot fence to be the only buffer between number 3 Chase and this parcel.
Yeah, the right now the parking area that exists is right along the lot line as well. With no.
Okay. I was just hoping there'd be some type of improvement along that edge there, but.
Well, I would say that the 6-foot high fence is a significant improvement over what's there.
Yeah, I agree.
Good.
Okay. And then just back to what this board actually has control over, and is the landscaping. So, you know, Conant Street's kind of one of the main thoroughfare in and out of the square. So what, can we just talk a little bit about what the vegetation or what the landscaping will look like on the Conant Street there, or on the actually, I guess it's technically the front of the building? Can someone just speak to that briefly?
We are proposing additional foundation plantings along that Conant Street lot line. And I think that is that's going to be the foundation plantings along that area. I'm looking to see, I know that I can't share this with you, but there are also plantings and a tree along the Conant Street lot line. There are plantings at the corner of Conant and Chase that I can see on the photograph that I took of the site, as well as there are some plantings right along the streetscape there, and those are certainly going to be maintained.
Okay. All right, and then just one last comment. So for the owner, Mr. Gattuso. So I hope that he recognizes that, you know, the town gave him this opportunity to add the unit. And I think it would be fair to expect from him that he'll maintain this property in a professional manner, and it'll be an improvement for everyone, not only for himself, but for the people that live nearby. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there any other folks that want to participate from the public in tonight's hearing?
Mr. Chairman, Rick Betancourt, may I make a comment if possible, sir?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Betancourt.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to, I drive by that location a lot, and I just want to let you know that I'm in favor of the proposed revisions that the landlord is looking at. Listen to some of the commentary. Most landlords hope to be absentee landlords. In other words, not living there. The intention of acquiring property in the town in which you live in or close by is to maintain the property. I don't think any landlord that really, especially from what I've seen and being in real estate for 20 years, really intend to try to let their property run down or fall into disrepair for whatever reason. And as far as past transgressions by previous occupants of the property, I think that's an irrelevant conversation to have at this particular point in time pertaining to the application submitted by the applicant. Looking at the back of the yard, the parking lot there's a 47.3 or 47.7 distance from, as far as the parking lot goes there. The average, based on the Massachusetts general laws in Danvers, the average parking spot is about 9 by 9. That'd give almost 38 feet for that vehicle to back up, which is parking lot number 8. So as far as having the ability to store snow in that corner, plenty of room in my opinion. I mean, the individual took a chance, bought a property. The individual is looking to maintain the property in an adequate manner. We're all in this especially for those that are in the real estate industry, make a little bit of money when they can, seized on an opportunity, took a risk, and as someone that drives by there and I drive by there all the time, Coney Street. My business has been downtown Danvers for 20 years. So I'm sorry, 17 years, 14 years, my apologies, 14 years. And, whether he puts a tree up or arborvitaes or big bushes or whatnot, I think it's going to be an improvement, whatever this individual does at the time. But I'm just listening to some of the commentary, and I'm in favor of everything proposed, even though it's not I'm a town meeting member of Precinct 5. It's not my precinct, but I'm in favor of whatever all the revisions and amendments or changes that the applicant has made, Mr. Chairman. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Appreciate the comment. Is there any other comments from the public? All right. If not, why don't we come back to the board? Does any member of the board have a follow-up question? I have one, Attorney McCann, or to the applicant. Can you just, for the benefit of those who are looking, and maybe these pictures were only shared with the board members, can we talk about what is going to happen with the siding and in the staircase that looks like it needs repairs?
Jim, can you address that specifically, what you're going to do with the siding, make repairs, I assume, as needed?
Yes, that's correct, Nancy. We're going to use all check stack and redo all the decking and, make everything 2021 standards.
Okay.
These are going to be luxury condominiums, high quality condominiums.
Well, that's why I asked the question, because if this is going to be built as a condominium, you got a whole different market that you're going to go after, and the condominium association, from my personal opinion, wouldn't accept buying a unit if the exterior wasn't in good shape. So hopefully that gives some comfort level to the neighbors, and the concerns around how this property will be maintained. Because there'll be 4 individual owners going forward if this project's successful instead of a rental. So I think that's a positive for the neighborhood and for the community. If there's no other questions, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Lou?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Peg?
Yes.
Favor as well. And if we can turn to what's before the board for a vote, is there a motion to accept the application as presented? And Jim, if I can ask if there is going to be a favorable recommendation, if you can read the decision, if you'll be prepared to read the decision. So is there a motion to approve the application as presented with the condition that the applicant and Attorney McCann will work with the engineering division and the planning staff to get the outstanding questions answered in an appropriate fashion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Lou?
Yes.
Peg?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
I'm in favor as well. So Jim, can you read the decision so that we can act upon on the decision?
Yes, at a hearing held on May 25th, 2021, the Danvers Planning Board voted to approve the major modification to an approved site plan submitted by James C. Gattuso for property at 25 Conan Street, assessors map 43, lot 278, shown on the following plans.
I guess so, yeah.
Plans, 25 Conan Street in Danvers, Mass, prepared by PJF and Associates, dated February 22nd, 2021, revised March 27th, 2021, consisting of 3 sheets. This approval is granted with the following waivers from Section 4 site plan approval of the Danvers zoning bylaw. 1, Section 4.8.3A, cover title sheet locus map required. A locus map on the cover title sheet requested. There is no locus map on the cover title sheet. 2, Section 4.8.6 landscape plan required. A landscape plan requested. No submission of a landscape plan. The additional landscaping for the proposed project is shown on the proposed layout plan. 3, Section 4.8.7 utility plan required. A utility plan requested. No submission of a utility plan. The proposed project does not require an increase in demand or an alteration or relocation of existing utility services. Hold on. 4, Section 4.88 grading and drainage stormwater plan required. A grading and drainage stormwater plan requested. No submission of a grading and drainage stormwater plan. A drainage system is not proposed with this project. 5, Section 4.8.10 building elevations required. Building elevations requested. No submission of a building elevations. No alterations to the exterior of the existing building are proposed other than the removal of fire escapes. Pictures of the existing building were submitted in lieu of building elevations. 6, Section 4.8.11 lighting photometric plan required. A lighting photometric plan requested. No submission of a lighting photometric plan. Existing lighting on the building to remain and no additional lighting is proposed. This approval is subject to the attached list of general conditions. The general conditions are shown in standard and usual general conditions with every development. Let's see. Any approval of this site plan shall last within 2 years from the grant thereof if construction has not begun by such date except for good cause. That's it.
Thanks. Any comments on the decision?
Were we going to add some type of notation about working with the engineering department?
Yeah, Jim, you want to add that? I mean, just to clarify, I know we mentioned that as part of the motion to move forward, but why don't we make this as part of the decision as well?
The applicant shall work with the planning department on any outstanding issues or administrative issues.
Okay. So hearing the decision as read in, is there a second to what's being proposed in this decision?
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote for formal action around this decision. Lou?
Yes.
Peg?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And I'm in favor as well. So we wish the applicant best of luck in their development.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Hobart Street, Maple Street, North Putnam Street, former Hutwat property. This is an informal presentation of the proposed Maple Square project. So for the benefit of the public that's listening, and there's been a lot of interest in this public, there's no formal action that will take place tonight. This is an informal presentation by the applicant to the board for informational purposes. There will be question and answering, and there will be an opportunity for the public to ask questions, but there will be no formal vote tonight. So I just want to set expectations. So with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant, and I believe Attorney McCann, you're going to be leading this discussion, or if you can introduce the team members of the applicant.
Yes, thank you very much. Again, my name is Nancy McCann, and I have with me the development team, Georgetown Capital AAM 15, as the developer of the property that we're going to be speaking about, which is often referred to as the Lee property or the Hutwat property, located at the intersection of Maple and Hobart Street. With me tonight is David Massey. He is the founder and CEO of the development entity. Nick Fay, the Chief Investment Officer. Megan Thayer, an analyst for Georgetown Capital. Also, I believe Tony Lebro is also on the call tonight. He is the COO and CFO of the development entity. We also have tonight, who will be presenting with me, is Scott Cameron from Moore & Cameron Group in Danvers. He is the project engineer. And so that's who I believe we have with us tonight. And again, as Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned, this is an informal pre-filing presentation of the concept plan that the development team has been working on with planning staff and TRC over the last year or more. With regard to this this development that is called Maple Square, and it is located in property that has been rezoned as far as the addition of an overlay, which is the 40R Maple Street traditional overlay district. The underlying district remains Industrial 1. For this property. This property has been the hot lot site of industrial use for many, many years, and the Industrial 1 zoning district does still remain. There is an overlay district that was approved by town meeting some years ago, and the concept that you're going to see tonight is the result of the meetings that we have had with town staff, as well as the result of the due diligence and site review that has gone into this over the last year and a half by the development team itself. So this is going to be a concept plan discussion that we'd like to present to you, and the purpose of this is to get feedback from the board members on the design, on the layout, on the uses, and anything else that that can inform us as the development team as we move forward. No filings have been made with regard to this application, though. So there are this project, I should say. There are no applications that have been filed. There are no applications that are pending. We are in the concept stage, and we really want to get input as we proceed forward to the next step. And in light of attempting to utilize the 40R zoning district that has been adopted, and being mindful of the underlying zoning uses and the parameters as well as we go forward, and the historic use of this site. This is a challenging site. I don't need to tell the board that. I think you know that. The site that we're talking about is made up of 11 different parcels that are being brought together to create this project, and it is a challenging site. We have existing industrial buildings. We have all of the issues that come with a historically old industrial use. We have asbestos removal, we have building removal, we have other environmental concerns that we have to deal with before we even could proceed forward with actual building of a development. We started out with this project looking at 160 residential units in a mixed unit development, and we are bringing to you tonight a slightly revised mixed use development. And I think, Mr. Chairman, if I can, Nick Fay has our project slides that he hopefully will have a better luck than I in sharing his screen, if we can do that.
Yeah, let's do that, please. Nick, yeah, we'll turn the floor to you.
I'm going to probably keep talking, and Nick is going to work the slides for me and for Scott if he can. Let's see how we do. You're there, Nick, right? He is. I can see him.
Just give me 1 second here.
We can see you, Nick.
Good. Let's see.
There we go.
All right. So again, this is the Maple. Whoop,
We lost it, Nick.
we lost it. There we go.
Okay.
All right. So Maple Square. This is the intersection. Looking from the mobile station across the intersection. This is a rendering of what we're going to be talking about tonight. The project summary. Overview, we are talking about a mixed use of residential units, restaurant with indoor and outdoor seating, a retail tenant with a pickup window. We are also going to be discussing the preservation of the rail house that's located off on the other side of Hobart Street, as well as a public park. So that is the mixture of uses that we're talking about for this project. We lost it again, Nick. Again, consisting of 11 lots. Next slide, please. This is an overview of the area. Area A is the area that we are talking about for the mixed use. Area C that you see down towards the bottom of the screen has the existing rail freight house, and that is going to be a parking area, again with the preservation of the rail house. That the development area itself, the contiguous area, is Area A. Next slide. This is again an overview of the zoning map that I know all of the board members are intimately familiar with. We have some views here of the existing industrial building that I was mentioning. We have a lot of industrial buildings here, none of them attractive. Most of them have certainly quite run down and will need to be appropriately removed and environmental issues dealt with. But I just wanted to give you kind of an overview. Then we have some non-industrial unit uses that were along Hobart Street. That is the rail house that I mentioned, rail freight house, that is located on the parcel across the street, across Hobart Street, next to the gas station, that would be utilized as parking, as you'll see on the site plan. Part of this project, and this is the site plan itself. Part of the project, of course, with this being a 40R, we are looking at the 20% affordable housing within this development. So again, as I mentioned, we started out with 160 unit design. We had meetings with planning staff. We had 2 TRC meetings. We've had quite a bit of discussion. We had a separate discussion with the fire department and with regard to emergency access provision. And we've done a lot of our initial concept investigation and due diligence. And what you see here and what we are presenting as the concept plan is 120 residential units, a mixture of 1, 2, and 3 room units, and those will be located in the L-shaped building that you see on the site plan. And again, I'm going to be turning this over to Scott Cameron in a few minutes too, and he will go into far more detail on the plan with you and the layout. But I just want to give you an overview. The parking spaces that you see within the L-shaped building are under. Those are below grade parking spaces. So the L-shaped building is the residential building. At the far Maple Street end of the L-shaped residential building is a restaurant. That is a 54-seat restaurant with an outdoor dining patio area located in the area that's being shown right now. And then we have the retail use, 13,000 square feet, located in the corner section, and that does have a retail pickup window associated with that use. Much of what we discussed with planning staff and amongst the development team in working toward the requirements and the intents of the 40R zoning district and the zoning provisions are how we can make this project pedestrian centric, and we have done that, we believe, with the sidewalking that Scott will discuss, as well as a public park feature and a connection between North Putnam Street and Hobart Street that is a pedestrian connection to that public park. And also, as I mentioned before, the preservation of the freight house. So we have a lot of things going on here as part of this concept. And of course, we have the 20% or affordable component to the residential unit. So 24 units of affordable housing would be provided with this project. So again, this is a concept plan, and that we're presenting it as a concept plan to get feedback, to get input, to get thoughts on this. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Scott to take you down to the next level of looking at the concept plan.
So Attorney McCann, before we turn to Scott, can you just comment, because I don't think you mentioned how big the retail piece was. You mentioned the restaurant size, but can you just summarize the retail again?
13,000 square feet. One anchor tenant. It is, as you'll see on the renderings, it is a 2-story building. However, the story is a faux story. So the occupied area is the first floor, and that is 13,000 square feet.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thank you for having us tonight. For the record, my name is Scott Cameron with the Moore & Cameron Group. Been a pleasure having an opportunity to work with this team on what Nancy described as a very challenging set of parcels here with the 11 properties in total, and the various challenges we have both horizontally, as you see here, and maybe not so much vertically as well, as we are contending with some grade changes and other challenges that we'll be presented with in trying to transition the property into hopefully a vision that we work with the board and the team through this process. I want to note too that I am also very grateful that you've taken some time out of your board meeting agenda tonight to listen to this presentation as a conceptual plan. Oftentimes, you hear that word and you think, it's very early in the process, but this is the culmination of well over 18 months of kind of research and development into getting to this point in the project, in consultation also in the later stages here with the various various staff from the town. And there's been a lot of different iterations of this plan getting here. So with that, I just want to walk through. This is kind of a color-coded plan to draw out and emphasize some of the aspects of the design. Again, one of our objectives was to optimize the pedestrian access and circulation not only within the site but around the site. And you'll note around the property where you're following the street lines on Maple, Hobart, and North Putnam. There's a fairly wide sidewalk system that varies between 12 feet to 24 feet in width around the entire perimeter of the project. That includes to the left side, connecting between Hobart Street and North Putnam. You'll notice the large green area to the top left of the plan, which we allocated a little over a quarter acre towards a pocket park. And, in the context of this particular property, may look like it's set behind the property. However, we're trying to plan and look towards the development of the whole district. And this particular pocket park is actually situated very close to the middle of the district in this area. And we felt was a very good location to create some connectivity between this kind of notable set of real estate and the rest of the district behind it. And again, this is just an allocation of space. We haven't done any detailed landscape design of the park yet, but you can envision the possibilities with such a space and what you can do in there, from sitting, outdoor sitting, passive recreation, art spaces, things like that could be allocated here. And the L-shaped building, which is the residential component, it's really situated with two main entrances. So of course you have the entrance in the site side of it, but we also developed a scheme where the North Putnam side is also a main entrance to the building. There's no parking on that side of the building. So the only way to really get there, unless you were lucky enough to grab one of the street spaces that would be constructed, is you're walking there. And that's also, we have a little pull-off area for deliveries, emergency access to the building, and try to create some connectivity through the building as well, between the site and the adjacent street. So the building, you'll see the red section of the L-shaped building, that's actually a 4-story building, portion of the building, and then we step it down towards North Putnam Street, and the green section is 3 stories. You'll see that a little bit better in the renderings coming up. The very end cap where Nick has the mouse cursor, where it says 3 stories, and the cafe patio, it's about a 4,000 square foot commercial space for a small cafe, somewhere in the vicinity of 54 seats in that space, and again directed towards Maple Street to try to pull people into the district and try to create an outdoor amenity space, which hopefully, as the rest of the district gets built out, heading, I guess, north or the top of this plan, which isn't shown, into the rest of the district, other developments. So again, that's kind of a centralized location where the cafe patio is located in the district. On the corner between Hobart and Maple, you'll see the blue square, which is the main retail anchor. That's a 13,000 square foot building. It will be constructed as 2 stories, although the second story wouldn't be a usable space. That would just be to kind of build up the street line. And the 2-story building was something that was expressed as an important part of the architecture of the site. The first floor ground level access would be the main retail component. And you'll see there is a small drive-through component to that, which we tucked behind in the utilitarian area of the property. So in the middle of the property would be your outside, your exterior parking area. It is showing all as purple, but you'll see the bold kind of circles and shapes in the middle of that. Those are all landscape islands or pedestrian circulation routes through the property. So there's kind of a horizontal route through the property. There's also a vertical route through the property. The area where Nick has the cursor now is the location of the drive under, so this would be kind of a ramp that goes down under the building. We've allocated most of the residential parking underneath the building. There would be 104 parking spaces underneath the building. So we're kind of getting best utilization of the footprint of the building, not only for the residences itself, and of course the roof of the building has an impervious footprint, but we're not creating any more impervious footprint with the parking area because we're putting that within the building itself. And then right next to that, just north of that, is an access area for your mechanic rooms, and actually the solid waste area will be within the building, so there won't be any exterior dumpsters or compactors. That's all contained within the building, which will be climate controlled. which has a, obviously we're not having to deal with that, dumpster area in the middle of the property, which inevitably somebody's going to see it or notice it. So this keeps it within the building and contained. Directly across Hobart Street, you can't quite see it, but that is where the rail station building is located. One of the changes we did make, there were plans to remove that building initially to put more parking there, and that was just going to be a sole parking parcel. But there was a lot of interest expressed through our conversations with staff to preserve that building. And so we redesigned it to include the building to remain and ideally be repurposed for some use, and then to add parking so it's more of a usable, functional space for whatever use could potentially go there. One of our goals, another one of our big goals here with regards to vehicular circulation as it relates to the property itself and also around the perimeters. One of the challenges we have with the site today is it's really open with respect to the amount of driveways and curb cuts that are throughout. There's very, I'm sure we're all familiar with it, but it's very open. There's a lot of areas for cars to pull on and off the property in locations throughout most of the frontage. There's a good picture of it. And we wanted to eliminate these curb cuts because, they create a lot of, if the property were being fully utilized, obviously it's not as much anymore these days, there would be a lot of traffic and cars pulling out, and it's kind of chaotic in how it's set up because it's an aggregation of 11 properties. So we've reduced the curb cuts into the property, the main property, to 2. So you have your main egress on Maple Street and your main egress on Hobart Street. These would both be 2 directional curb cuts, but we've taken what is an extensive amount of curb cuts, consolidated those down to just 2. And the reason why we have them both locations is to cater to the vehicular access into the property coming from both locations, and also emphasizing utilization of the light at the intersection so people have the option to get to the light. Obviously, the left turn out of Maple Street heading back up to Route 62 is not an ideal maneuver to make. You can't take the right-hand turn onto 62, so people are going to want to go back to Locust Street. In a future iteration of this, we would be going through a full traffic impact and access study, looking at how the circulation is going to work as it respects to obviously the adjacent intersection and other intersections within the study area. The multiple curb cuts also allow for safe emergency vehicle circulation through the property. We have it designed so that a fire truck can pull in, it can actually go in front of the building, pull back out, and then exit onto Hobart Street, or turn back around and head back up and out to Maple Street. Of course, the main fire station would be coming from downtown. So the primary access could be either Maple or Hobart, depending on what the quickest path is to the site. And we had met with Captain Brooks and gone through locations for mechanical rooms, hydrants, access. So part of the entrance to the North Putnam would be your main emergency vehicle access would come in through that location, your fire department hookups. And again, most of the emergency calls, it's not for fire. Of course, we have to be prepared for those. But the majority of the calls are coming from other emergency response needs. So it's police or ambulance needs, not necessarily fire. But when the call comes in, all 3 responders go to that call. So you will always see all 3, an ambulance, a police car, and a fire truck arrive on site. So we got to make sure we can accommodate all those vehicles on the property. Again, the focus on the street frontage and the walkways was really to create a nice wide area that could be landscaped and designed. So we have basically a large canvas that we can envision a lot of things happening there. That would be my vision for the future iterations of this design as it goes into next levels of detail. Nick, maybe you want to go through some of the renderings? Yeah. All right. So these are some 3-dimensional renderings that were put together by William Stark Architects to give you a kind of a visual representation of the site. Again, you can see the 2-story construction. Of course, the ground floor would be the usable portion of that property, but presenting as a 2-story building. And this is the end cap with the cafe. You can see the outside seating area and the 3-story construction. So there'd be the retail on the ground level on the end, and then 2 stories of living above it. And then the aesthetic along the ground level was also set up to kind of mimic that ground level retail looks. That's what you expect, although that would be, of course, residential at that level as you go back. But it was try to create that uniform ground level look. This is a closer up. So this is kind of on the back side of the retail with the drive-through. Next. Oop. And this is looking from, you'd be standing at the ambulance building looking across Maple Street. And again, from the Locust Street intersection, kind of standing in the middle of the road there. And this would be standing at the, obviously that's the yellow freight building, looking across at the site. So a lot of sidewalks. We were trying to take principles from creating not just pavement into sidewalk. We reserved areas so you can have a landscape strip on either side of the walkway. So there's buffering between the vehicular traffic and the street. You can see the parallel spaces that we incorporate into the design. We took the parking off the street near the main intersection of Hobart and Maple, focusing more on pedestrian access and minimizing, minimizing parked cars and optimizing vehicular flow through there, which should create improvements to the circulation on the public roads. Let's check my notes real quick, make sure I didn't miss anything. I think as far as utilities are concerned, we're not at a point yet in the design of the project where we're getting into utility systems, but the design intent would be that we would be doing very extensive investigations of the sewer system and the water system around the property, working with the engineering department on the design of those various utilities, and stormwater management, which is a very probably the most important thing I'm doing as a civil engineer these days. In my role in mitigating the impacts of stormwater runoff. Obviously, we have a site that is mostly impervious today. It is very industrial, so we will be looking to reduce the impervious footprint on the property and then provide treatment of the stormwater runoff in full compliance with both the Mass DEP Stormwater Management Handbook, which the zoning bylaw brings into the design requirements, and also the Danvers Stormwater Bylaw, as most recently published this recent April, with the latest updates on that. So we would expect to be working and fully complying with the stormwater management aspects of the project. And I think, Nancy, I didn't miss anything. I always do.
No, I think you covered everything really well, Scott. Thank you. I just want to summarize a couple of things. I started off with this, and I'm going to circle back to it. This is a challenging site of 11 industrial parcels. The challenging nature of this site in redevelopment can't be overstated. And what has been going on with this development team over the last year and a half is designing and creating a concept plan that is viable, that can work on this site, and that really attempts to work with the new zoning overlay district as much as possible, and as well as we can. As Scott mentioned, the traffic report, traffic is always an issue. Traffic report will of course be done and would be a very significant part of a full application package. One thing that Scott didn't mention, I believe, this development creates 30 on-street parking spaces. So we talked about the surface spaces, we talked about the underground parking spaces, we talked about the parking lot on the other side of Hobart Street, but there will also be 30 street parking spaces created. And I know people currently park on Hobart Street, but not particularly safely. This would involve the creation of true parking spaces, properly curbed, properly striped, so that they are safe, usable parking spaces. And finally, this is a concept. We're here to get your input. We're here to get your thoughts about this. The zoning analysis has recently been put together on this concept because, again, we started off with and have gone through a number of different concepts. But that zoning analysis, the zoning relief that will be required for this project is under review by planning staff and under review by the development team as well as we get further along into this. So we don't have for you tonight specific answers as to what exactly we will need from each of the different phases for, or the various boards, I should say, from a specific zoning permitting process that is ongoing with the assistance of planning staff. And we would very much like to thank planning staff and the various department heads that have met with us over the last year plus in putting this together and in reviewing this and giving us input. I did mention we had 2 TRC meetings. We've met with planning staff. We've met with the town manager. We're trying to gather as much information as we can as we go forward with continuing with the design process. We thought now was a good time to come to the planning board without having made a filing. No time periods are ticking. We are coming here with the concept plan to get your feedback on the uses that we're proposing, the mix of uses, the layout, anything you would like to tell us, but we are in the concept stage. So thank you very much. That we would be very happy to hear questions and comments from the board.
Okay, we appreciate the presentation. Obviously, you know that this is a very important parcel in the downtown and the focus of the redevelopment effort. So I'm sure there's a lot of questions to the applicant. So why don't I start with Peg? Peg, for the benefit of the public, chaired the planning board when this district got rezoned. So Peg, you had a vision, we had a vision. Why don't we start talking about, does this project meet that vision?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what you last said. Someone's got a mic on her.
Yeah, I just wanted, we spent a lot of time when we rezoned this, a lot of input from the public. There was a vision of what the downtown was going to look like. I just want to try to focus this conversation around is the vision of what we were trying to accomplish. I mean, I recognize personally the difficulty of this particular site with the environmental concerns and an economic viability project that's got to be built profitably. I mean, that's a gift. But obviously, it's a very important parcel, and I'd like to have some conversation around the economic drivers of this project to the downtown as well. So, but let's start with you, Peg.
Okay. Well, as you said, I was chaired through all of this and moved this through planning board. I don't know how many years ago. Was it 2016 or 2017? When I first saw the rendition, I was just a little, oh my gosh, that's so huge. The building in front is only 2 stories though. Across the street, the fire station is much higher. I think my first question or my comment would be about the one. How big is CVS down the street? I need something to compare the size of this building. Anyone know how big CVS is?
10,000 square feet, ma'am.
So this would be about 3,000 more square feet, huh? Okay. Our intent when we did this was to have a commercial mixed-use building in the front, retail downstairs, and then have apartments. I think we had 20 per acre, and with special permit 24, but it's been a few years. I'm trying to remember. And then as you move further back into the site, we would have more townhouses and smaller smaller houses as exist there now. So my concern always is to make sure that whatever we're doing fits into the surrounding areas. So I guess my first question would be regarding the apartment buildings or the condo buildings, the 3-story and 4-story, are they going to have, you can have any retail on the bottom other than just, are you proposing any retail other than just the cafe?
At this time, it's just the cafe. There could be possibilities of some commercial space on that first floor as well, in the area where Nick is moving the cursor. At this point, we're looking at about the 4,000 square foot area that would be restaurant, but there's a possibility for that perhaps as we go further in the design.
Okay, to generate activity in the center. I actually do like the break between the main building and the buildings in back. I think the parking lot, while you have some landscaping there, breaks up, that one long building. One of the biggest concerns we had in going through this was the tunneling effect by the size of the buildings beside the building across the street and the effect that it could have on what we call tunneling. And I think along Maple Street, that doesn't have a problem. I think my concern is on North Putnam, the size of the buildings on the other side of the street. And we don't really show looking down at North Putnam. And also, where's Betty Ann's?
Where is it now?
I know where it is. Well, yeah, where is it under this new design?
Well, Betty Ann's isn't shown, as we don't show any of the tenants right now in the new design.
What's next to the 4 stories down on Hobart Street? What's that building?
That's a residential building.
That's a house. So it's going to have a 4-story building right beside it. That must be a fairly small house.
It's a 2-family property, Miss. It's Miss Catherine DeLumba's house.
Okay. And then the one next door to it?
That's an open lot that's used for motor vehicles, ma'am.
Okay, I know where we are now. Okay. I think for one of my suggestions for the main retail would be that you move the door down toward Hobart Street so you could it's easier for people to get to, although you have all the parking in back. But if people are walking, it's easier to get to if you had a door down that end. The open space in back, is that because you plan in the future, maybe another phase to start working on other residential in the back?
No, that's a public park.
I know it's a public park, but you mentioned, Attorney McCann, that it was in the middle of the properties.
Oh, Scott had mentioned that I believe that it's this project and that end of this project actually falls in the middle of the overlay district is what he was.
Oh, okay.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. Didn't know whether there was another phase.
No.
Well, I will tell you that it meets the criteria of what we were looking for. And as my chairman, I do understand the economic difficulties with this site. And our intent always was to get smaller and more moderately priced apartments or condos in this area. We don't have we don't have much apartment or condos around in Danvers that young people or old seniors that want to downsize can go to. So that was one of the intents of putting in a district such as this, and it would give them quick access to the downtown and then other retail areas within the downtown, commercial and retail. So I would say that was our overall intent. First brush at it, I guess I'm a little overwhelmed at the moment, but I can see that you're trying to meet that criteria and, not do our solid walls and tunneling effect and everything else. So I think I'll pass it on to other board members and see what they remember from our hearings 4 or 5 years ago and see what their opinions are.
Okay, Jim, you're next.
All right, thank you, John. Yes, it's a great, I think it's quite a presentation, and the intent of the zoning bylaw that we did for this project was to encourage this type of development. I understand it's a hard site, with the constraints of the site and the environmental cleanup and so on, but I think it's a a good reuse. I know it's taken a lot of planning. I think it's going to be like taking the bar exam to get through those zoning requirements. So I think the town and the applicant have their work cut out for them to make sure there's compliance, but I think there can be some give and take, and there's some discretion with the board in that sense to make it really improve the outlook and the gateway into the town of Danvers. I mean, like Peg said, when you first look at it, it's a bit overwhelming as to the size, but I think if we look back at our requirements, this is pretty much the density that we were charged with looking at by the selectmen and by the town manager and by this zoning initiative that was passed overwhelmingly by the town of Danvers town meeting. So with that in mind, I did have a few questions. What is the exact acreage again? I'm sorry, I didn't get that out.
I am going to ask Scott. I believe it is 4.7, 4.3 acres. It's about 4.5 acres, right, Scott?
Apologies, I was looking for the mute. Yeah, it's, and I want to keep in mind too, we're going off of assessor's records, so one of the very next steps will be doing the full survey of the property to lock that down. Again, it's Attorney says you probably know it's very old real estate, so right. we have to do that boundary survey and nail down that number. But yeah, it's around 4.2, 4.5 acres.
And that includes the Hobart Street across the street piece.
Yeah, the aggregate land area. Yep.
And that across the street piece, I assume the intent is to keep that historical train structure building?
That's correct. Yep.
What's the use of that going to be? Is that going to be some affiliated?
Yeah, we don't know yet. We did have a meeting with the neighborhood, some neighborhood folks the other night. We had a remote meeting, and we learned a bit about what has been going on in that building, and it has been used as storage, I believe, for perhaps I believe it's the Boy Scouts, but there's been a number of things talked over the years about what could happen there, and it's under review. Preservation of the building is intended to be part of the project, but the ultimate use is open for discussion.
And the parking that is associated with that structure, is that all associated with that structure, or is some of that counted toward across the street?
All of the parking in that parking lot is used to meet the parking requirements across the street. The number of parking spaces we have shown on this plan, both the surface parking spaces as well as the underground parking spaces together, meet the parking requirement of the zoning district, but that does include the parking spaces in that parking lot.
So if you propose a use for that building, wouldn't you need parking for that building? How does that figure with your count?
It depends on what the use is. Right now, it's used as a storage for the Boy Scouts, I think. I don't want to misspeak, but that's my understanding. And that doesn't particularly need any parking. So it kind of depends what it is ultimately used for. We do have the public parking lot right across Charter Street. From that as well, we have parking spaces that are being created and existing on the street. So that has to be fleshed out a little bit. But the parking lot that we're showing is included as part of the project, and those parking spaces are included in the count.
So, for example, would you direct perhaps the restaurant or retail people to park there instead of the residents?
Well, most of the residential parking is going to be under the building, much of it. And again, as the bylaw contemplates, there are sharing of parking spaces and between uses within a particular project development zone, if you will. And there will be, some residential parking, much of it is not utilized during the day, but the retail parking would be needed during the day. So that's what the whole shared, and there's a good deal of discussion in the bylaw, both under this zoning district as well as the recent zoning district further down Maple and High Street, about shared parking. And so that would be, I think that is encouraged as part of the bylaw and would be part of this this project as well.
Yeah, my only point is that if you live at the site, you'd rather park underneath and be close. If you have groceries or toddlers or people that you're coming in and out with, if you are working at the site, you know, could we encourage the people that are working at the site, either in the retail or the restaurant piece, to park at that lot so that that lot gets fully utilized? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think that's the point. I take my notes, and that's a good point.
Do we have a breakdown of the 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms?
Yes, we do. The breakdown is 1 bedrooms, 48 1-bedroom units, 60 2-bedroom units, and 12 3-bedroom units.
And the total parking spaces?
223.
Okay. Has I know in the past, Nancy, getting back to that site across the street, that we had that other location on the abutting property, that the town parking on the abutting property we were trying to use that as a rail trail kind of tie-in.
Yep.
Has there been any talk about using this site for the same thing?
The development team has been reaching out to planning staff to talk about the rail trail and how this project fits in, enhances the rail trail. So that's part of the mix as far as how this project can benefit the rail trail, and how the rail trail can benefit the residents and the employees of the site, and have it work well harmoniously together. So I don't think we've gotten a deeper dive into it at this point.
Okay, my other last question is, obviously with the addition of 120 units in that location, I know that the town has done some traffic studies around that area and traffic improvements between the Locust Street and the Poplar Street intersection. And I guess how does the applicant plan to address traffic issues, and how it relates to the Maple Street and Locust Street? I think you'd want to obviously put the traffic on those streets. Hobart Street, impact on Hobart Street, and also impact on North Putnam Street, to lessen the traffic impact on North Putnam as it relates to the abutting neighborhood on Hobart Court and further down the road. Would you maybe think of doing one ways or something like that, or
Yep.
Is that a one-way now, North Putnam?
No,
No.
that is two-way. As I mentioned, the development team has retained a traffic engineer. That traffic study has not been undertaken yet, but it's in process. And as part of the traffic study, as you know, from looking at many of them over the years, it is typical in the traffic study. Not only does the engineer study a neighborhood, a scope of various intersections, not just the immediate area right in front of the building. The study goes out further than that, but certainly part of any traffic study is mitigation, and recommendations by a traffic engineer that says you should be doing this or that, or we recommend this or we recommend that, and that would be part of the traffic study, and we would anticipate working with the traffic engineer, and ultimately that would be part of the review by the planning board.
Okay.
Nancy, if I could, Mr. Chair, just to add on to that a little bit more, we will often, as part of the traffic study, be working with the town staff, engineering, police, planning, to get a comfort level with the study radius. So what is the radius of the study? What intersection are going to be included? So we're not just going into this blind with some assumption as to what's important and what's not. The process itself requires coordination with the municipality, because the town also holds a lot of data that will be part of that study. So that would be my expectation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, John. That's all I had.
Okay, Lou, why don't I turn it over to you now?
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And again, I wanted just to thank you for the presentation and all, and the comprehensive discussion about this. And I understand that certainly a lot of work has gone into this. I was not on the planning board when this came around, so I did have a chance to review the bylaws and to take a look at this carefully in relation to this proposal. And I did have a couple of areas of that I had some questions with respect to. With respect to the and I understand this has not gone through a full zoning review, but in terms of the density, it's my understanding that this area is under the sort of, if we're looking at the map, I believe it's the core mixed use area. And so there is in terms of it's my understanding that is a matter of right, what could be placed right there now in terms of density, is that there are 18 existing units, and there were 94 new, for a total of 112 units. And so it looks like this is 120 units, and that would also, I believe, that same area includes the new development across on Locust Street, which I believe has 24. So it seems like right now we're already over the density, and I just wanted to see if Attorney McCann could sort of chime in terms of that. If understanding you indicated that you did start off with a higher number of units, I think it was at 160, but it still seems to me, at least, the concern I have is that it still seems to exceed the limits that are set forth in the bylaw.
Yeah, we're still reviewing that as part of the zoning analysis, and part of that, and a big part of that equation, is the survey that Scott mentioned that has not been undertaken, because the density is determined by units per acre by right and units per acre by special permit. So that has fluctuated a little bit during the scope of this process that we've been going through over the last year and a half, and refining the area of this project. So that's still under review. We understand that there is a certain percentage or units per acre that are permitted by right. There is a certain percentage of units that are permitted by special permit. Is there a capability to go above that? I think we're honing in on whether that is a permittable process to increase that density, or whether that is the limit of by right and by special permit, and then applying that answer to what the actual area is once a survey is done, will be all part of the next mix. But we are aware that there could be either a zoning cap that we have to deal with, or zoning relief outside of special permit that we might be looking at. Okay.
See, that's a concern that I would have in terms of certainly in terms of the density, and I understand that there'll be more information to be had on that. But you're looking for feedback. That's a concern I have.
Right.
In addition, as well, just looking at still looking at the residential piece of it and the building itself. And I did have the chance to walk over there as well, and walked along North Putnam Street as well. And again, I think a concern that I do have is just in terms, and I think this was expressed earlier as well, is just sort of the size of the building, and that not wanting to cast a shadow on the, or even, you know, on the rest of, for example, on the rest of North Putnam Street. And again, looking at in terms of looking at the design pieces of the bylaw, I believe that, and again, getting back into zoning, I believe that units that are, you know, that you would require a special permit for buildings that exceed 24 units. And so, you know, so it would contemplate, rather than having one large L-shaped building, instead having a series of smaller buildings, which could break things up a little bit. Has that been, and maybe that's a question for you, Attorney McCann, or for Scott Cameron, had smaller buildings been considered?
I will jump in just quickly and say a couple of things about that. But we are mindful of the zoning provision that you just mentioned with regard to requirement of a special permit for a building with more than 24 units. So that special permit is in the mix. Okay. One of the iterations of this plan, originally, I think the first TRC meeting we went to was with a plan with 4 stories entirely, and separated into 2 buildings, and one of the buildings actually had a bump up to 5 stories. So we've come down to, at this point, we've got the 4-story and the 3-story, and the purpose of the 3-story wing was really to address the concern that you mentioned with regard to North Putnam, and bring the elevation down. But as Mrs. Zielinski mentioned, you have right across the street, you've got the Lions ambulance, which I think is pushing 5 stories for that section. So we do have a mix going on here, and it's been a balancing as we massage the concept plan going forward. But doing smaller buildings, significantly smaller buildings, I will let Scott speak to that if he has any comment on that.
Yeah, and just before Scott, you know, the concern I have as well, and understanding the size of the old fire station, you know, and the height of that, you know, again, I'm concerned also just in terms of walking down North Putnam Street. These are, you know, 2.5-story buildings that are in relatively close proximity. So I'm concerned about them looking at sort of you know, facing a monolith, which they wouldn't necessarily see that with the fire station.
Nick, I don't know if you have I thought we had a photo looking down North Putnam in the deck here. Just want to get there's some of them. Yeah,
that's a
yeah. So right, I'm just kind of pulling up the views now. You know, one of the things, you know, when we talk about shadowing and sunlight, so one of the aspects of the overlay district covered this in great detail. And one of the things that, you know, first off is the height. The important thing is the height. You know, we're not towering above the homes, and at the 3-story, these are kind of 2.5-story buildings. But with the height of this, we did maintain that 3-story limit and the height there. And even on the end cap, where if you go back to the site plan, Nick, with the color, where it shows the red section, I guess the step, yeah, that's a 4-story there. As the building comes across, yeah, so on the red section, it actually, I should probably adjust this a little bit, just a little detail, but at the very end, you see there's a dash line at the very top end of that building that goes across. That actually steps down on the end units to a 3-story, so we're stepping that building height down. So you're getting that angle from across the street looking up at it. And the north-south is kind of, I guess south would be closer to where the 4-story on the bottom end of the red building is, and then north would be where the cafe patio is, plus or minus. Yes. So the sun's not coming directly, you know, left, you know, right to left across the plan. It's kind of at a kitty corner, which will also help with a lot of the, you know, the potential, you know, you talk about shading. Across the street, also keep in mind that the parcel, there is a parcel on the 2 corner properties that is controlled by the Lee family. That's also part of, so that's right in the corner. I don't know if we have a shot of it. Oop. Yeah, there we go. So we haven't planned that out yet. And that's right on the end cap where the cafe is. Then you have, you know, the existing multifamilies. And then you have another kind of industrial property further back, which is kind of half in front of the building, half across the park. So, you know, from a planning perspective, the opportunity to do a multifamily building of this style happens. We have the biggest tract of land to do that. My expectation would be, you know, if someone were able, I guess, to get together with all the owners and put something together, you know, maybe they could get all this property. My expectation would be that you probably see a lot of smaller projects coming up as the rest of the district opts in over the next, you know, however many years that takes. But with respect to the practicality of it, you know, with, you know, the modern, you know, kind of construction and planning and aspects of this project that we're considering from just a planning perspective, the market and what the market is saying we need for the demographic that is rapidly starving for, you know, and seeking housing, by breaking it up into a whole bunch of smaller buildings, we drive up our costs tremendously. It's a big number. You think about each 24-unit building would each have its own elevator, would each have its own mechanical systems, so you're having to do this multiple times for each building, and that cost ends up getting carried forward to the end user, which is the people that are living there. So one of the aspects of the design here, and why you do see a lot of larger, you know, garden style apartment or projects like this, is because it can be done very efficiently. We can really help with the cost of living by incorporating smart building systems where we're kind of creating efficiency by smart construction and smart design and smart planning. And at the end of the day, that just really helps out, you know, what the end beneficiary is, and that's the people living here. So we did look at various different building footprints. We did have this broken up a little bit. I will say there are many more. There are other concepts with curb cuts on North Putnam Street, where we're bringing traffic into that area, creating cut-through situations across the site. And another aspect that I love about this is we don't have that traffic influence to North Putnam. It really opens up an opportunity to keep that very local to the street, make it very pedestrian friendly. We're not bringing traffic from this property to North Putnam. It's not going to be a convenient way to get around unless there's a street shut down or some very rare situation. So, you know, I think it's something as we vet out and we look at the architectural of it, components of it, you know, from concept through what would be an eventual plan. We're having this first meeting with you. You're seeing it for the first time. We've been looking at it for 18 months. I expect there's going to be a lot more transformation and evolution of this project as we go through it. And through good architectural design, we can break up that facade and still keep it as a single building. There are ways to do this, and I'm not going to pretend to be an architect. We will have them here at a future meeting. But I think there's ways we can intelligently plan this out and make it work. But we have looked at it. But that's kind of my short rant on that.
No, that's good. And then so. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, because I'm concerned about just the bulk and the size of
Sure.
that, and so you know, and so again, that's a concern that I have, in addition to this, the number of units. I did want to just turn just briefly to the issue of the commercial building, and just some concerns. And again, this is dealing with, and this was also pointed out. I just wanted to note that we did receive a letter as well from Mark Goldstein from Beverage and Diamond regarding this. So I continue to review this when you get the opportunity, if you haven't already. But the concern I do have is in terms of the pedestrian focus of the commercial space. In terms of, again, I walked there today from downtown Danvers, and looking at the plan, you know, compared to, you know, as I'm walking, I noticed that, you know, from sort of the plan, I don't see any, you know, I don't see pedestrian entrances from Hobart Street or from Maple Street. And so I'm concerned about pedestrian, you know, inviting pedestrians in to that area from Danvers Square. And I'm concerned about almost that creating almost a wall where it's just, where it really it's going to be more car centric rather than encouraging people to come from the downtown. And there's new development that is in downtown on Maple Street, so I'm concerned about them, being able to access it, or at least even being an inviting space for pedestrians to access it. A concern as well is as I think it's been referred to both ways, is either a pickup window or a drive-through, which I believe on the plans is listed as a drive-through. Again, I'm concerned about pedestrian access, pedestrian safety, and I understand that there's a traffic study that you'd be looking at. But even just looking at just today, at 6 o'clock at night, there were cars that were backed up to almost almost to the train storage building. And so if there's a drive-through going through there, again, I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned whether even drive-throughs are even allowed under the under the bylaw. So those are my concerns. Again, just to recap it, pedestrian access to the commercial building. It's a large commercial building. That's another bit of a concern, but also the drive-through. Any response to that at all with respect to to pedestrian access and my concern of sort of creating a wall? And again, I'm concerned also about this area being disjointed from the rest of downtown.
Yeah, I think we've attempted to address that with this concept. I think we have moved the entrance to the commercial retail building. Nick is pointing that out there. It actually, on a prior iteration, things were flipped around a little bit, and the access point was from the parking lot. We have moved the entrance door to the sidewalk right along Maple Street.
So there is I'm a little confused because looking at the rendering, it did not appear that there were any entrances. It looked like it was on the corner of Hobart.
Right there. That's along Maple Street, right there.
That's the very back end of Maple Street, correct?
No.
No. The intersection, you see the light at the intersection.
Right, that's Hobart.
And that's Hobart and Maple intersection. Then you walk down Maple Street and your entrance is right there.
I'm concerned that there's no pedestrian entrance that is on the Hobart Street side or closer to Hobart Street.
Oh, I see. Yep. I note your point. And this iteration, we have moved the entrance to be on the street. Mm-hmm. And to address that concern, and also we have significantly increased the sidewalk area that wraps around that corner to add landscaping and add pedestrian access. That was a point that was brought up immediately by planning staff, and with the first concept that had the access door coming in off of the parking lot, which I believe is something that is permitted by special permit, but it was noted, as you have just said, that having the door on the street for street access is more pedestrian friendly. So we did attempt to do that with this design. So I'm noting your comment.
Yep. Nick, okay. Nick, would you mind pulling up the zoning map again? Because I just wanted to. I didn't really hit this too much in the presentation, but yeah. So you can see the whole district here. So at the location where you had the retail building, one of our objectives is we want to pull people into the district. So if we put a door on the corner, outside of other concerns about security being there, safety being on an intersection corner, there's several reasons why that was not a ideal location, but we wanted to pull people into the district. So our expectation is, as the rest of it is developed over the next 5, 10, 20, 30, whatever years, we're trying to pull people further into it and extend out that pedestrian, access and interface into the district itself. This is right on the end. It's right on the edge of it. It's the same reason why we put the cafe location put is to try and pull people in further. Next property, further up Maple Street is we don't have that planned out yet, but that would be the next one up, I would expect, with this team. And so there was some thought put into that aspect of it. And the other thing we're dealing with here, and I mentioned this when we met with the neighborhood last week, is that one of the challenges Danvers has, and I've certainly heard this talked about in prior meetings, is that Danvers unfortunately does not have that train station. They don't have that that commuter rail option that really pushes and promotes pedestrian activity. It is, at the end of the day, people do need a car to, if they work anywhere outside of downtown, which a lot of people will, they do need to get in and out of here. So that's, again, it's just the reality of the area. So, so we're balancing a lot of variables with this particular location, but it's specific to here.
No, I understand, and I understand that. And that all being said, I mean, I happen to live not that far from the middle school, and I walk regularly into downtown Danvers, and so as do others who live in this area too. And so I'm also concerned about a development potentially that could, just in terms of the way it's designed, that could discourage people from even going a little further, or could even pull away part of the downtown. That's all. And so to have an adverse impact. And the only other thing I want to mention, I don't want to monopolize the time, but just with respect to the train depot, I appreciate the thought that would be that you would anticipate retaining that. I did have a question, and again, this is something, more of a comment, just to whether or not any additional, understand that there's parking that's dedicated there. And I think that answered my question, but whether or not there would be any consideration to having sort of the pocket park or whatever in that area, as opposed to on the other side.
Interesting thought. I'm making a note of that. That's something that we can look at. So if I'm hearing you, put the parking over on where the North Putnam, where the park is, and move the park to where the freight building is.
I was just saying that in terms of I was asking whether that was considered, because it could be, again, with the station there and sort of proximity to the rail trail, that could be something that at least the way I see it, it could seem like it could get more use being in that area, as opposed to being what seems to me a little more hidden towards the back end, towards the North Putnam Street area.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I made a note of that. It's interesting.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your. That's all I have for now, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks. Now, one area of question I had was around the public park and where it was located. I personally like that idea of revisiting where that goes. I just didn't feel that public park would serve the purpose that the intent was. So, that's one comment. Overall, there's a lot to digest. The residential piece was a key driver, affordability a key driver. My question is any of this going to be condominium, or is it going to be all rental?
These are apartments.
Apartments, okay. So let's turn to the retail, because I really want to understand the economic drivers, right? I was expecting personally a little bit more on the retail side, and maybe we can look at the photo from the corner looking from the mobile gas stations. I think that's one of the most important corners of this development. What are the options can you go back to the rendering, the one, that photo. I mean, getting that corner right to me is one of the most important parts of it. And obviously, if this is going to be a large pharmacy, et cetera, being attracted to this location, I get that will be a driver to get people to come to that particular location. But are there other options on the second floor for office use other retail? I mean, I know retail on the second floor doesn't fly, but I was hoping that there was going to be more of a retail component. From a feasibility standpoint, what are the options?
Nick, I'm going to call on you because you've been intimately involved with that aspect of this. What can you share with us on the thought process of the building mix?
Sure. So what we had talked about in the past with planning staff is that and I'm sorry, I can speak and pull this up. I'm kind of like flying blind when I have the presentation up. But what we had contemplated is that we would activate this kind of constellation that runs across the site from the cafe patio. So this, 4,000 square foot restaurant's pretty good sized restaurant. And then we're investigating possibly adding another retailer. And then as you make your way, this is obviously the anchor tenant. And then you have this rail building, which we've heard a lot of good ideas actually through the many meetings we've had in town, and ideas like cafes or breweries and different things like this. Of course,
now, Michael?
Of course, this is early on, so we haven't been courting any tenants just yet. In terms of the second story of this building, this tenant
Mike,
is.
Sorry about that.
This tenant, the office market is quite weak right now.
Yeah.
And so that's been a struggle. Initially, we were concerned about the viability of restaurant space, honestly, and we know there's a decent amount of space available in town and in the market. So we've investigated that. It would be a pretty, it would be challenging to add, but we'll consider it. And if there's demand, we would love to meet it. But
I definitely like the restaurant concept. I've heard, many people in the community saying, how come Danvers doesn't have a microbrewery or something to that effect? I mean, something that's going to drive a different feel to the downtown. Obviously having 120 residents is going to help the downtown. I mean, that's obvious from my perspective. Having the right retail mix, the right location for the public park, so it's utilized. My gut doesn't tell me that it's going to get utilized where it's currently being positioned, unless there's going to be some activity that drives that. If it's going to be a passive park, I really do like Lou's idea. I think it's going to get better use across the street. So that's really, my questions. I get the economics of building it all out, the apartments at once. I got to give you guys a lot of credit. The design and the openness looks good, and having having different size buildings. I'm just trying to understand the retail component of this particular project, and if it's going to be a CVS that's just going to be relocating, fine. Then that opens up the question: what's going to happen to the existing location? Is that factors into some of the decision making as well. So those are my comments. And we appreciate the oversight. I know it's we've been going at it with the board members for a while now. David, let me turn it to you. There's been a number of people from the public that wanted to participate. You've been keeping track, I think, of some of the questions that have been asked, and hopefully I don't want to have repeat questions when we open it up to the public, but let me turn it to you first to make sure that we've covered most of what you've heard over the last couple days.
Sure. We've covered a lot of ground, so there's not going to be much left there. We do have correspondence. I'm looking through it right now from Andrea Daly and Michael Daly, or one of the Dalys. Most of the questioning has been answered. There is a question about the width of sidewalks. How wide are the sidewalks going to be? Comments about the artist rendition and there being a fountain in front. I think for the level of detail that the correspondence we received is asking. I'm not even sure that the design team is fully there on the fleshing out of the fountains features or the signage features or things of that nature. I don't want to speak for them, but
I think that's true, David.
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, and I can remind the public, this is not the official public hearing, so there's going to be multiple opportunities to weigh in and have questions answered. This is really intended to be a big picture conversation in making sure that we're all on the same wavelength. So, but given that, why don't we open it up for?
Mr. Chairman, before you turn it over, I just want to reiterate what you said about retail, and also for Mr. George's benefit, as part of the discussions we had in putting together this overlay, the plan was to have a large building on the corner. And as you got further back into the district, you got more you got residential, and further back you got maybe even housing. The building in the front that we had discussed would have residential on top and retail down below. And I myself, to reiterate what you had said, Mr. Chairman, is I would like to see more retail. I would like to see another reason for people to walk down to this area or go to this area for other than just one retail store. I like the way that you set it up with the residences in a different location than the retail store, but I do think that we need to find a way to get that mixed use that we were going for in putting together this overlay, rather than just a restaurant and one retail. We wanted to find other reasons to get people down here to buy things and have availability for space for them. So just to clarify, the large building in front, that's always been what's been planned. It's always been a mixed use, though, where you have retail and then residential. But I like this design. And I've always been very concerned about looking at a blank wall. And I think that, the people in North Putnam will be looking at apartment windows more than just a blank wall. It'll be apartments. So I think that will be more aesthetically pleasing if they go with this design. That's it. You can turn it over for more questions.
Yeah, no, that's good clarification. It's just, I think to reemphasize, we're all trying to find the right balance on the mixed use concept, right? I mean, that's really, but in the same token, retail is what retail is in a downtown location, and Danvers is unique because it has the Liberty Tree Mall, right? So what's going to be attracted to the downtown is going to be, compared to what you might be seeing in different communities that don't have the benefit of a Liberty Tree Mall. So, David, I'll turn to you to maybe help me prioritize comments from the public while we take, up until, let's say, to 9:30 and tonight, another 20 minutes of input from the public, so the applicant get the benefit of a handful of people from the public. So, do you want to prioritize for me based on your involvement with this project and some of the comments that you've gotten along the way?
Sure. We have had one written correspondent who was also at the meeting. I'm not sure if they're going to choose to speak, but that's Mark Goldstein.
Okay. Mr. Goldstein, are you looking to speak at this particular point in time?
Mr. Chairman, yes, and briefly being mindful of the hour and the amount of time we have left, and that I've submitted a letter. Let me start by saying it is clear that a lot of work has been done here, and I also think that it's clear from your comments and from our review that a lot more work needs to be done in order to meet the vision of the bylaw. I'm going to just articulate at a fairly high level a couple of the concerns so that the development team can hear them, so that the planning board can hear them, and obviously comment to the extent that it's appropriate. And I know that I appreciate that Member George has read the letter and had articulated some of that, and so I don't want to go over too much of that ground. But really, what our concerns are the size of the two buildings relative to the vision that we understood the bylaw was passed under, the design. Frankly, the utilization of the drive-through, as Member George indicated, and the indication, which I think is quite clear in the bylaw, that drive-throughs are prohibited. The potential for cannibalization of the existing uses, in other areas of Danvers, and I'll put a footnote there and say already tonight there have been references to CVS, a large pharmacy, and a medical retailer with a drive-through on the corner. And so it would be pretty clear that one of the potentials, or likely, is that a CVS or other pharmacy would be moving. And as everyone knows, there's already a CVS in Danvers, and it already anchors a very important commercial area in the town. And lastly, and there has been a lot of discussion about this, how friendly or unfriendly this development is to pedestrians. Member Zielinski declared at the end of her first statements that she was a little overwhelmed, and I think she's right. These are very large buildings, and when you compare the requirements of what's allowed and approved under the bylaw and what would require additional zoning action and permits and relief, it's a strong indication that this goes well beyond what was originally conceived of as being sort of part of the overlay district. There's opportunities to deviate and change, but this is a development that's going to require a lot of zoning relief. This is two very large buildings that are not particularly friendly in terms of pedestrian access. Some of this has already been mentioned, and so I'll touch on it just briefly. But as you know, if you look at figure 18.8 of the bylaw, it clearly articulates a different vision for that very front corner in terms of its pedestrian access, in terms of sort of the amenities that would be there as a welcoming and warming environment for people who are arriving in this newly created environment and neighborhood. I think it can't be overstated that the job that you all have to do tonight, and as you evaluate this first proposal, is extraordinarily important because it will set precedent as to how future developments in these areas under the overlay district will be evaluated by development teams. And with that in mind, of particular concern for the pedestrian-friendly aspects, the entrance, the size of the buildings, the size of the buildings relative to the requirements in the bylaw with that set sort of defaults for 5,000 GFA, building footprints of 10,000 square foot maximums, exceed all of those for the retail building. And in particular, the proposition that a drive-through would be added for something that is intended to be pedestrian friendly. And as we understand, the bylaw would be prohibited under the bylaw. I think lastly, a preliminary review indicates that there's going to be a lot of zoning relief that's going to be required here. And the development team has acknowledged that they haven't done that analysis yet. So there's a lot more work to be done. There's a lot of discussions to be had about whether or not those are appropriate under the circumstances. But what it indicates is that there's a lot being jammed into a relatively small site, and that it is incumbent upon everyone in their review to make sure that this is an appropriate size, density, and development for this, which is a critical site and the first in the overlay district. So with that, I commend you to the letter that I have sent. We're interested in engaging in the conversation as we go forward, but we are very concerned about the way this has been articulated and, frankly, the potential impact on other areas in Danvers. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yep, thank you for your comments. David, do we have anyone else?
Yep, there's Tom Aylesworth, who's still on the call, if you would like to comment.
Thank you, and Mr. Chairman and board members, thank you for the opportunity to be heard tonight. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Marcus, Sirico, and Brooks, and thank you for the opportunity to be heard tonight. The one thing I wanted to comment on and ask a question about was Mr. Goldstein touched upon it a little bit, and I think I heard one comment or two from a board member, and that is the important standard that the board has to consider, and that is adverse impacts to nearby businesses. And I haven't really heard, I don't have the benefit, of course, of knowing all the homework and the extensive work that's been done over the last year plus, but I didn't hear anything in the presentation tonight about how the nearby businesses would not be adversely impacted by this development. And, as you know, one of the goals of a 40R project is to act as a transition from residential to the downtown district, not to act as a self-contained community where the retail and restaurant and other services provided seem to mostly service the residents of that community. And looking at this design, there are comments such as it looks like a wall, it's disjointed, and I would concur with those comments. It seems like this, to me, it does appear to be more like a self-contained community, and it appears that more work would need to be done to try to integrate it into the existing downtown. There's a difficult balance that has to be weighed. One is that you want this development to draw people to the downtown, and that's obviously important. But you also don't want, by so doing, you don't want to destroy the downtown by taking business away from the nearby businesses. And that's a concern I would have with that large retail use. And Mr. Goldstein talked about cannibalization of existing uses. I would have a concern about that and how that might affect downtown. I know that there's a prevailing theory that if you build it, they will come, but that's not necessarily true. This kind of a larger retail use can actually hurt local businesses, and that would be really tragic for that to happen. While affordable housing is really important and deserves all of our support. And by the way, I do comprehend, I understand how difficult a development like this is to try to put together. I've worked on some projects that might not have all of the same components as this one, but I do understand it's difficult. But you do have to weigh, of course, all of the competing interests. And I think what the public deserves is more discussion about how the nearby businesses won't be severely adversely impacted by this development. And I'm wondering whether the board or the development team has looked into similar developments that are in downtown areas and other communities, and if there have been any studies that have been done to look at whether there are adverse impacts to nearby businesses. And I think that would be a key component of what the board is trying to accomplish here. So thank you again for the time, and I look forward to your response.
Okay, appreciate the input and some of the questions being posed. David, is there other members of the public that want to weigh in? And again, obviously, there's going to be a lot of conversations around this development as we move forward.
Sure. There's a Carolyn Wilson, if she's still on the call and wishes to.
I'm here. Yes. I'm Carolyn Wilson. I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 3. And I don't want to reiterate, there's been a lot of great points about our downtown. And I know this is a really big decision because the impacts are going to be great and long lasting. So this isn't a short-term thing. One of my biggest concerns is the retail space, because as I look at the zoning again, one of the things that attracted me to this space as exciting is that we were looking to find smaller businesses, smaller retail to be there. And it just doesn't feel like the space that works for our downtown. And so that's really a concern that I have. And when I've spoken to some of my neighbors, a concern that they have about, is this going to bring people, pedestrians or people into our downtown to come to the businesses? So I'll leave it there because I think everyone else has really made some of my other points. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments.
Thank you. Yeah, I like it that some of those comments were made before I went on. People are onto it, and that's good. It's not just us, and that's really important.
Yeah, no, this woman is.
Okay, can someone mute their mic, please?
Yeah. Also looks like Matt Duggan is still here if we want to conclude with Mr. Duggan, if he wants to speak.
Matt, do you have any comments? You know, we'll make, and again, for the rest of the public, there's going to be more opportunities to speak, but
No, the comments that I've heard from both board members and from the other public members are quite articulate, and I thought they were pointing on, so I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let me just, turn it back to the applicant, and maybe Attorney McCann, you can maybe give us a timeline of expectations, what we can be thinking about. Obviously, you've got a lot of feedback tonight, as the chair of the board, and, we appreciate all the hard work. Obviously, I'm familiar with one of the developers. I think that developer has the capability of pulling off this major project. That was one of my concerns, that whoever was going to come into our community had the ability to execute, and I think that's really important as we look at this project. Long term, we want to make sure that whoever we're going to work with can successfully complete the project as outlined. That's going to be an important area of concentration that I have. So, do you want to try to give us a sense of the timeline and what the next step in the process would be?
I think the next step in the process is to continue to work with planning staff on the zoning analysis and zoning interpretations to gather the information that we have received. We have met now with the Affordable Housing Trust. We have met with a small neighborhood group. We've met with the planning board. We've met with some other business groups, and we've certainly gathered a lot of information tonight. We've heard from a couple of attorneys who it would appear to me represent some business interests in the downtown that are looking to be protected, and we understand where they're coming from. And we need to digest what we've heard and continue forward with refining the project and the path. And as I mentioned, we have retained a traffic consultant, traffic engineer, who will be preparing a traffic report for us. And I would anticipate that I suspect we will probably come back and visit with you again prior to an actual formal filing. We did have 2 TRC meetings. I suspect we'll continue along that path. Whether we need to do another TRC, we'll take some guidance from planning staff on that suggestion. But we've gotten some good information tonight. I think what I'm hearing from the board members is we have certain issues, and I have taken my usual pages of notes as I do at this meeting, and I know that the development team has done the same. But from those board members who were involved in the adoption of the 40R zoning district, while this is a lot to review tonight, and we understand we've been looking at it for a year and a half, but this is the first time you're seeing it. It's a lot to review, but what I'm hearing is also that really this is in keeping with what was anticipated and what was being sought for a 40R mixed use development. Can there be some tweaking as to the mix and certainly refinement of the plans? Yes, but I think as several of the board members said, this is really what was anticipated here when you look at how the bylaw is set up. Now, will zoning relief be required? There's no question about that. There is no project that's going to go in here that's a viable project that's going to proceed forward with no zoning relief required. This bylaw is set up to be a special permit project development for this area. And there are challenges with this site that we're balancing. We're balancing the needs of the downtown. We're balancing the needs of the businesses and the tenants who will be here, the businesses that are already in town. There's a lot going on here, and we get that balance by having meetings like this and by having meetings with the planning staff and other town department heads This process, I've been doing it as a long time, as you know, and I think this entire permitting process is extremely valuable. And this is just the start of it, to get this initial concept out to you. And I'm not hearing anything tonight from the board that tells us we're in the wrong direction. I think we have a lot of comments that we need to consider, but I think what we've done thus far, working with planning staff and with the departments, we do have a design that that is ready to proceed forward toward continued refinement. And I think we've gotten some good comments tonight, and some validation in some of the thoughts that we had with regard to the project. So time frame, we've got work to do before we would be ready to file, and traffic study is one of the biggest ones, obviously, and the way the bylaw is set up, there is engineering that needs to be done before a filing could be done, as well as certainly additional work on architecturals and things like that. So we've got some work to do. We will be in touch and keeping close communication with planning staff, so that when we do move forward, we move forward with agreement and understanding on the permitting process for the project.
Okay, great. Thank you. David, Aaron, I mean, I'll give the last comment to you guys as staff for feedback to us as the planning board members. Is any comments that you two want to make where we stand currently right now, recognizing this is the first time the public's got a chance to look at this project?
Sure, I can go first. I think kudos to the planning board. You all covered a lot of ground and pointed out most of the things that we've already discussed in previous meetings with this development team. The only other thing I would add is, we'll get back to the board and the development team on the zoning analysis and are wading into with machetes and shields the zoning bylaw that we have to get through the full analysis to get where we're at. But beyond that, I don't think there would be any, subjective opinion unless Aaron has anything else.
No, I think David, that was well said, and thank you.
Okay. Thanks again for the presentation.
Well, we do want to thank the board for your time tonight. This was very generous of you to give us this time, and we appreciate all the comments that we've heard. Thank you very much from all of the folks on the development team. This is very helpful as we move forward.
Well, I appreciate that. And obviously, Attorney McKeon, this is a critical project to get right for the community. So the time was well spent. So given where we're at, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Lou, good. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. All right. Good night, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you
very much, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.